Welcome to our very first podcast here with Coral Realty. My name is Pawel. I am the founder and broker of record here at Coral Realty, and today I've got with me two lovely ladies, Jenny and Amanda. Jenny, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jenny, one of the OGs of Coral Realty.
Yes, badass mom, badass business agent,
Oh, I'm,
and
I'm
then
so glad you
Amanda.
think of me that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm also a mom to Greg.
Yes,
So
and you'll
cute.
see Greg all over Instagram, so make sure you check it out. Well, welcome to our very first podcast. We're going to be talking all things Toronto real estate, politics. We're not going to be pulling our punches. We're going to be sharing our honest opinions. And in today's podcast, we got some really, really good topics we're going to be covering. Obviously, we got to start off with the Trump tariffs, followed by an interesting story that Jenny has for those that want to try and sell real estate themselves. We do have some tips for you. And then there's some interesting news on the foreign buyers tax front that Amanda wants to share with us. So all these things we covered today, but to kick things off, let's talk Trump tariffs because I feel like they're definitely dominating the news at the moment. There's, for those who obviously haven't seen, Trump announced 25% tariffs on Canada. Then he gave a 30-day pause. Then he's like, no, we're starting it up. And then he's paused it again for 30 days. I don't know what's going on with him,
I
but
don't think
it's
anyone knows what's
definitely,
going
nobody knows what's going on with him, but it's definitely impacting the market. So, what are you guys seeing?
I'm seeing a lot of hesitancy. Everyone's on pause right now in terms of buying. I think we're all kind of waiting it out to see what the end game is here, but curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm with Amanda on that. And I think, like, I feel like we're kind of maybe overreacting because of like what it actually means, but who knows? It could just be extended month by month by month, and then nothing really comes to fruition as we're kind of seeing like early on right now. So, yeah, I'm curious how that will unfold in the real estate market.
Yeah, for sure. And he's the announcements are kind of like a yo-yo. It's like they're in, they're out, they're in, they're out, and I guess that introduces a level of uncertainty. And the one thing we know for sure is anytime you introduce uncertainty, whether that's into the economy, into real estate, whatever it is, it tends to cool things down. So, are you guys seeing that the market has slowed down a little bit as a result of this?
In terms of buyer clients, yes. I think the clients that I'm personally working with that are selling are still eager to sell. Especially being in a spring market, there's more showings. But I think when it comes to politics, it does affect us. Even, clients that think it doesn't affect you, it does indirectly affect everyone. So I think we're all kind of feeling it right now.
Yeah, in my market, I would say that, well, I usually work in the condo market, so maybe I'll just speak to that specifically. Sellers still want to sell, they still want to get out, like whether they're upsizing or trying to liquidate their assets. And I do find that there has been buyers, but obviously not a lot, more than last year, but still, like with this news coming in, I don't see it being a busy spring market for us.
Yeah, it could really slow things down right through till the summer. I mean, the last 2.5 years, we've seen this weird pivot where around like end of May, beginning of June, the market all of a sudden disappears. All the buyers
Mhm.
disappear. I don't know if they're going away on vacation, they're still post COVID, missing the traveling, but it almost seems as if the market completely dies. And it doesn't typically recover until like late September. So I don't know if that's in the cards for us again this year. But in terms of providing advice to buyers and sellers who are watching this podcast and are wondering, okay, well, we don't know what's really happening with these tariffs. They might come into effect again. We don't really know what Trump's goals are with this. I don't know if he's just doing this for shock and awe, or is this some sort of negotiating tactic to get something in return, whether it's US banks to be able to compete with Canadian banks here. I don't know what it is, but I guess what type of advice would you guys give to buyers and sellers in this market right now?
Mm. Okay, so I mean, if I was a buyer, I would probably be hesitant because you never know. You could be losing your job the next day. because of what the economy is kind of unfolding. But as a seller, like if you got to get out, you got to get out. But if it comes down to like what price makes sense for you to get out, I feel like that is a big question in whether to sell or not. If you could obtain the price that you need to sell, but if you don't need to sell, like don't sell. I've been telling
Mhm.
people like don't sell if you don't need to sell. Like we already know at the peak of the condo market, the specific condo was worth 100, 150, even $200,000 more than what it is today. So can you really make up like $200,000 in a year or two with your wages? Like, if not, then like maybe hold on. As a buyer, I would probably take advantage of these prices if you can. Like, if your job is stable enough, I don't know, maybe you work in the government, perhaps, maybe not as a self employed person because it's kind of fluctuating. But yeah, I feel like the prices now are great for buyers. It's probably going to be a
Mhm.
buyer's market this spring. So if you're a buyer, it's a great time to buy.
Yeah, I
I
think
completely agree with that. I think there's just so much inventory right now. And if you're a buyer, the ball is in your court. You have more leverage now than ever. In terms of selling, I agree with you, Jenny. I have some clients that are kind of on the fence right now about selling. And I'm like, people think, oh, because we're realtors, we're like, yeah, sell, sell, sell. But you do really have to look out for your client's best interest. And if it does
Mhm.
honestly make sense in the long run to wait it out a few months or a few years, whatever that looks like for their particular case, then so be it, right? Everyone's a little bit different. There are just so many factors right now. So I guess it really just depends on the individuals that you're working with.
And it's so tough as realtors because I feel like people go to us for guidance and they hope that we have this like crystal clear ball in terms of what's going to happen. And like I always approach things with my clients is based on the information that I have available to me right now. This is what's most likely going to happen, but that's never a guarantee. And in a very tumultuous market where there's so much uncertainty like there is right now, I think the biggest thing that we can give as advice to clients is that we don't know. So because of that, and anyone that says they know what's going to happen, they have a crystal clear ball, like run away. Don't work with those people.
Red
Come work
flag.
with us. Jenny, Amanda are awesome. They'll take care of you and do a really good job for you. But I would say that it really depends on who you are and what your goals are. So if you're a first-time home buyer looking to enter the condo market, I think this is like potentially a really good option. Because if you're looking at, for example, population trends for Ontario going out to 2050, our population is still expected to double. Although we maybe have more supply than we have demand at the moment, that's not going to exist for long. Construction projects are being canceled all over the city. Amanda knows this all too well. Her fiance works in the business. So, like eventually, I think by 2028 or 2029, like we're going to be doing like 10% of or 10% completions of what we would normally do on an annual basis. But then if you're, for example, somebody that needs to sell to buy, I think right now is probably a really good time to play it a little bit more cautious and aim to sell first before you buy because you don't want to get trapped. Like you typically want to buy and sell in the same
Mhm.
market, right?
Mhm.
I would say, I don't know what you guys think, but I don't think that I'm overly concerned that if you sell first and then buy, you're going to all of a sudden experience runaway prices. You're not going to be into the same price that you were thinking about before. But on the flip side, if you buy right now and the market continues to drop, you could be left on the bag, right?
Yeah, that's a really shitty position to be in. But I wanted to touch on what you said about like construction starts. Well, because of this trade war, if Canada were to retaliate, which they do intend to, that could drive up our construction costs in Canada. And construction cost increases, house prices increases, could result
Inflation.
in decrease in supply, affordability. It's going to be a shit show for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because my opinion on tariffs affecting real estate, it's on one side, it's okay, the Bank of Canada, they're expecting to cut or hold their interest rates for the next four announcements. But on the other side, like you're saying, it does impact building now, right? Like the cost of
Hmm.
aluminum, lumber, like it's steel, it's affect the bigger picture, right? They either have to builders either need to sell for more or we just completely slow down the industry. is the
And like
reality.
they're struggling to sell right now. Like there's nobody buying pre-construction. Also, who is selling pre-construction right now? Like, how do you justify to your clients like, hey, this is
Honestly,
good time to buy?
I've had a
What's
few
that, Jenny?
people ask me about pre-con. I'm like stay away. And some people are still adamant about it, like, oh, but then like we're not taking possession till 4 years down the road. It could recover. I'm like, really? Could it? I don't know if it can recover like $200,000 because it's already priced for the future.
Yeah, I think right now, like the developers can't build for less than 1,200 a square foot. So,
It doesn't
and
make
we're
sense for
seeing
them.
prices anywhere from 900 to 1,000 a square foot. So, do you really want to gamble and hope that there's going to be a 20% increase in prices over the next 4 to 5 years before you take possession? But actually, it's a really interesting topic because it's also going to come into effect when we talk about the foreign buyers tax and how that might actually change coming up. But
So,
um,
sorry. I was gonna say, I guess to let's just say the tariffs do take place. It does happen. Canada retaliates. What is the government to do? Kind of counteract increased housing costs. Like, what could they do? Like, drop interest rates even further and therefore weakening our dollar?
the Canadian dollar has been somewhat resilient despite us cutting rates more than the US. If these tariffs go into effect on the US side, I know Doug Ford is starting to charge an export tariff on electricity going to the States as of today. But
Hmm.
what I
Wow.
expect is that probably we're going to see stagflation, so meaning a contracting economy, but inflation's going to be going up. I think that, and again, I'm not professional. I do have an economics background, but I'm by no means a professional whatsoever. I do expect rates to come down. I think the Bank of Canada is going to be really, really for to do that. But we also have a lot of uncertainty on the political front in Canada. Like Mark Carney was just elected by the Liberal Party to be the next PM. Never mind the fact that nobody else had an opportunity to vote and confirm whether or not that's the direction they want Canada to go. We effectively have a dictator in power at the moment. Um,
Yeah, we were just
so,
saying it's like we even have a democracy.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's as if Kamala Harris became president after Democrats chose her to be the next running person, right? Without actually holding an election. It's kind of wild. So, like you said, there's so much uncertainty. And I think like from a buyer's and seller's perspective, have some honest conversations with your agents and just err on the side of caution until we see things picking up materially or there's some sort of resolution on the tariff front. And we're also getting charged tariffs now by China. So it's going to be an interesting year ahead. And I think now more than ever, it's so important to have an agent that actually works full time in the business. Because the thing is, I don't know if you guys get the same perception, but I feel like just going on showings on a daily basis, being in the business every single day, I feel the tide swing before we ever see it in the numbers.
I agree
Right.
with
So like, and we have these team meetings as well on a weekly basis. And even just as a team, when we chat, like we notice when things are changing, whether things are cooling or things are picking up, we kind of get that, like we got our fingers on the pulse a little bit quicker than the numbers and the data reveal. So I think now more than ever, work with a qualified full-time agent and someone that's going to be honest, because at the end of the day, yes, there are a lot of agents in the city and there's a lot of great agents, but there's an old saying that says you can't do a good deal with a bad person. And I think that really holds true in real estate. Like focus on somebody that's going to be transparent and honest with you.
Yeah, I feel like with the real estate market, we're not like the stocks market where it's so volatile. You see changes immediately. So it does take time for us to see those numbers and actually translate what that actually means in the market. But having people that are always in the market buying and selling, you kind of get a glimpse of what's really kind of happening before, like you said, the numbers get reported. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, why don't we pivot to the story that you have, Jenny, about somebody that reached out to you was a for sale by owner. I'll let you give some context, but for those that are watching, I mean, I think there's some good takeaways if you do ever decide to go down that route and you don't want to work with a realtor, you want to sell your home yourself, which I mean, it's fine. It's not for everybody, but it is for some people. There are some bits of information you can take away from this conversation, but just to get things started, Jenny, if you wanted to share that story and your experience and your thoughts.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is the for sale by owner? It is when usually, I guess, I want to speak to Toronto, Ontario specifically. It's where you may be paying like a flat fee to post it on MLS, and the owner is in charge of showings, negotiating, doing all the paperwork, kind of everything from like start to finish. And that's, trying to save cost on maybe a buyer agent, a selling agent. So they are saving some money, right? And the story with me is I had a guy reach out to me saying that he wanted to sell a condo in an area that I usually serve, Regent Park proper. And so he wanted to sell this place. He tried to sell it last year, and he had overpriced it last year. So, I mean, there's a lot of mistakes in what he did that we'll talk about, but he's tried to sell it last year. It didn't sell. So he was looking for me for advice. He told me what the unit number was, the property. So I was looking at the pictures while I was talking to him. And I mean, I want to talk about right away. He said he only wanted to give me, I guess, the right to sell it, the like authorize me to sell it, but he's only going to give me 1 day to sell it. So 1 day without doing like a lick of anything, like no
He thinks very
marketing,
highly
nothing.
of you, Jenny.
Oh, I know. Like I'm godlike almost. So yeah, so I guess he had a lot of trust in me to try to sell it in 1 day. But realistically, properties right now, especially condos in my market, are not selling under 30 days. Like it's really rare for it to sell within 30 days, which I've miraculously been able to do, but also because, I cross my T's and dot my I's when it comes to the listings that we do. And we put a lot of work in them, right? So, anyways, he tried to give me a 1 day listing agreement. And I said, like, I'm sorry, like, I can't do 1 day. And then he's like, okay, how about a week? And so I was like, I don't know. But after talking with him and hearing his expectations, let me just describe this property so that you can kind of get an idea of what
Yes.
it was. So it was a 1+ den with 1 bathroom, parking and locker.
Mhm.
But he thought it was a good idea to take this cookie cutter condo and make it into soft loft. And what that meant to him was ripping down all the bedroom walls. And so it was purely open concept. So to me, it was like a very large studio, no
Mhm.
longer a 1+ den. And where there was pipes and ductwork, he had removed the stucco so that it was just bare concrete where the bedroom was. So think of it like everywhere else is white on the ceiling except for like a square of concrete. And then
Mhm.
the ductwork he had sawed off. I don't know why, because I guess he wanted like a complete smooth, not smooth, but bare ceiling with no bulkheads. So he had like a piece of like sawed off ductwork. And I'm like thinking about the air exchange, like where it's going. Like, I guess it's just blowing dust in his condo. I don't know. But it was actually really ridiculous. And when I had told him that, like, hey, I don't think that's going to add, like, that's not adding any value to your condo, he actually was really adamant saying that, no, I think the right buyer will pay for, this look. And I said, the look
Mhm.
is very half ass. Like, it's not
Mhm.
well done.
Mhm.
And also now you've taken a 1+10 and made it into a studio. Like you're like, where are the comparables that you're getting to price it $150,000 more than what's worth?
Well, okay, so for those of you that are watching, number one, when you work with Jenny, she will be very honest with you about how she sees this process going. And to some people, that might come across as, oh my God, like that seems, very forward. But like when you're making such important decisions, you need somebody that can speak honestly and truthfully with you. And Jenny will speak it the way it is. But just for some additional clarity, and the reason why he reached out to Jenny was because she's actually a top saleswoman in that area. She had just recently sold a condo in a week or two, I think it was. Go Jenny. I mean, the reason he reached out to you and wanted to sell it with you and only give you a day was obviously because he thought very highly of you and you had done so much business in the neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, that definitely creates a challenge. So just to recap, I mean, he got rid of the one bedroom by opening up the walls. He only wanted to give you 1 day to 1 week to sell it. And I guess like what can you really do in that timeline, right? And look, if you're somebody that wants to sell yourself, by all means, go ahead and do it. But there's got to be some reasonable expectations. Number one, on MLS, we're not even allowed to list a property for a day or a week.
That's fair.
And I know people in the general public don't know this, but the MLS rules stipulate that a listing must be at minimum 60 days. So that automatically eliminates that option to us, right? But the biggest thing is, when he said that, well, if the person doesn't appreciate the fact that it's open, then I don't want to sell to them. It's like, okay, well, like this is the exact reason why you hire an agent to represent you, because you want someone to remove all emotion from the sale process. If you're looking to sell and get top dollar, who cares who's buying your property? Really, who cares? I mean, just do what it takes to present it the best way, to advertise it and make it desirable to the largest demographic of people so that you can get a sale. That's somebody that had a lot of emotion in it. And that creates a very challenging environment for someone like yourself to go in there and try to sell.
Any thoughts, Amanda, before I go into my spew?
Yeah, I think you have a lot of
He's got more
patience.
thoughts.
Oh my gosh. I was almost hoping that he didn't hire me because I knew it would be a challenge because there was just so much emotion wrapped up in it. Whereas it should be more, transactional, I think, especially when you're selling it and getting rid of it. Like, why do you care who lives in it next? So, everyone kind of knows that generally it takes more time to sell when you're trying to sell it yourself. And usually you get less money for it, usually, even with the savings of like the realtor fees, right? But some things I wanted to talk about was like why it does take longer and why it will sell for less. So, in this guy's example, incorrect pricing, like right off the bat, I priced his place about 580, and he was pricing it at 650.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of
Yeah,
a
like
gap,
that is like
especially in
no
this
one's gonna
market.
come see it, especially when it's like a buyer's market in the condo market right now. Like no one's gonna come see when your place is priced that much more. And also like the strong emotional attachment to like these little details. Like I asked him like, hey, would you put the wall back up? And he was like, if they paid me the right price. And I'm like you got to give them a reason to give you that price, right?
That's right.
And also like poor negotiation skills when it comes, like they're not in this all the time,
Prepared for
right?
it. Yeah. I think for anyone that's looking to sell privately, here's some bits of information. So really you got to step back from sort of your view, take a bird's eye view and look what type of process you're creating for everybody else. If this was me, right, if he approached me, there's a level of complexity that for sale by owners don't realize that working with them adds, right? So now you're not just dealing with another professional on the other end, with a realtor, someone that's been in the business, that knows all the rules, that you are confident, or at least you don't care, that they're representing them and giving them all the knowledge and the support that you need. But now, and with new rules that came into effect for real estate agents under TRESA, if you're self-represented, there is very limited conversation we're allowed to have with you without getting into trouble. And so, now we're representing our buyer, but now we're also kind of representing you. But then there's very limited information we can give you. And it just creates like a very, very difficult process. And it's not so much that I care that it makes things difficult for me, but I'm thinking about the experience that it gives my buyer, right? Like if I'm working with somebody on the other end that's not professional, that's not a professional industry, that doesn't have the experience, that might introduce all sorts of roadblocks or speed bumps along the way, and it's going to create stress for especially like a first time buyer, because that's probably the target demographic for this particular person. Like, why would I want to do that? If, and I'm not saying that I would never take one of my buyers to see a home listed for by an owner themselves, private seller, especially if it's a unique product, or the pricing is very attractive. But, if you're overpriced and then you're introducing all these other complexities that might come up, not only for me, but like specifically for the buyer, like why would I want to put my buyer through that? So overpriced, emotional, unreasonable expectations in terms of selling quickly, those are all huge red flags that I'm trying to save potential buyers from. So, if you're a seller, like think about those things. You want to make the process as smooth as possible. You want to incentivize buyer agents to work with you, and we will, but you got to make it reasonable.
Yeah, like, I mean, one thing he said to me was why he didn't want to give me the whole listing was he said, I think listing agents are useless, is what he said to me. He said, I understand that the buying agent brings the buyer and they had to like go to multiple properties to show this buyer. But like he said to me, listing agents don't do anything except stage, photograph, and like sell the place. And I was like, okay, not to try to take that offensively because I feel like I do a lot for my listings. But
Yeah.
when he said that, I think immediately I looked to his listing and he didn't do either of those things. I mean, practice what you preach. Like, if we're useless, so you say, I would like to see you stage it yourself, invest money in a photographer because he had taken photos with his iPhone, and like, market it other ways how you see fit, but like spend the money, if you are going to be listing it yourself.
Yeah, and that's really clearly somebody that just doesn't see the value in staging and taking proper photographs. And unfortunately, there are going to be people in the world that just simply don't see the value in that. But for everybody else, just for additional context, like on a typical 1+1 bedroom listing like this, between staging, photography, marketing, we're looking at an expense of around like $6,000 to $7,000. That's $6,000 to $7,000 that's out of our pocket that we may or may not get back, depending on if it sells. And selling is really dependent on your pricing, because ultimately, if it's staged, it's photographed, it's presented the best way possible, any other ability for it to sell is out of our hands. Like the only lever you have to move is pricing. So, like a $6,000 to $7,000 investment is not nothing. And
Mhm.
even on the photograph side, like people don't realize it's like our photographer, we're paying $1,000 plus for photos alone. Yes, there are agents that are, doing listings for 1%, or part-timers that are going to find a photographer for $200. I guarantee you, if you look at their photos compared to our photos side by side, the composition,
Mhm.
everything, it's night and day. And never mind all the other prep work that we get into it. Like, when Jenny does a listing in Regent Park, oftentimes she's having the entire unit repainted, because how stage furniture looks on different paint colors,
Mhm.
it really changes how attractive it is in photos. So she's coordinating trades for new painting, recocking the bathrooms, because there's nothing that like turns off a buyer more than like really beat up, grimy, nasty caulking. She's replacing the light fixtures. I know this because she makes me do the work. I'm the one on the ladder switching all the light fixtures.
Okay,
She
but you also, I made you clean like a grease hood fan
Yes, you did.
filter,
Yes. I'm
because
Jenny's
those are
part-time
important.
contractor.
Yeah, it's
Very
better
important things.
I'm
though.
also
I'd
a
rather
mover.
that. I'd rather have a good agent in your corner who's willing to do that than, I mean, on the hindsight, you also see these photos that are posted on MLS and there's vitamins on the nightstand and it's just little things, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah, there's probably like a good 2 to 3 weeks of work that goes into it before it ever hits MLS. And that's, you know, we're talking $6,000-7,000 in investment, but there's also that time investment, right? And that's got to be compensated. So, on a 580 purchase, like what's the commission? Like 16 grand or something like that, 17 grand. So you take away that $7,000 you invested, there's not a lot of meat left on the bone. Then you got brokerage splits and everything else. So yeah,
Yeah, but
maybe
also,
some people simply don't see the value, and that's okay.
yeah, also the time that we put in, because let's just say like the market does turn, or it's there's a huge supply, not very much demand. We could be working for 2 to 4 months without any pay, but our money's
Yes.
still on the table.
Yeah.
And that never gets accounted for, right? Like all of the other stuff that's kind of behind the scenes that we may be doing, coordinating with agents, taking on offers. Like there's many times where I can't put my kids to sleep because like I got to work on an offer to 1 a.m. and then wake up at 6 a.m. to take them to school. Like those things nobody really talks about, but like that's my time and that's my sacrifice that I make for my family to like be there for my client, to take those offers, to kind of work them through. And a lot of times they turn to shit. Like I had a listing, I guess, back in November when the market was slow, and we got like at least 3 offers in 1 week. So all of these offers, because it wasn't like an offer night style. It was kind of like one day was like 1 or 2 days full, just like committed to working through this offer. And it's always very fast paced, right? Like you got to get it done within like 24 hours to 48-hour span, or people get bored and they might go to another listing. So like you have to kind of be on it, and the deadlines are very stressful, and it's hard to like kind of wrap your life around these offers that do come in. Like Pav did help me with at least one of them because I had prior engagements, but like a lot of the things that we have in our lives kind of go on hold for like these things that no one really accounts for our time and effort during those
It's also
days.
the pressure that comes along with it too, right? I mean, I saw this, I heard this from someone and they said, I want to become a realtor because I don't want to do my 9 to 5 anymore. And I'm like, the problem and the reality with that is now you're working 24/7.
Yes, there's a switch. There's
It's so
definitely
true.
no off switch.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so final tips for anyone looking to sell yourself, by all means, like if that's the value that you see, like by all means do it. There's a lot of agents that will work with on the buyer side with private sellers, but just have reasonable expectations and put in the work. Make sure you have a bird's eye view so that you do see both sides of how this transaction is going to process. And most of the time, if you do things the right way, like there's a way to make it happen, but just have reasonable expectations and put in the
And
work.
don't be like so attached.
Yes, remove the emotion. And if you can't remove the emotion, just hire somebody.
Hmm.
There's a lot of discount agents, just hire a 1% agent to represent you at that point. It'll more than make up for that emotional detachment. But anyway, so let's pivot to foreign buyers tax, because now we got the tariffs. The
Mhm.
condo market is absolutely collapsing. Pre-construction condo market is collapsing in the GTA and actually Canada wide. And then on top of that, the condo market is in a downward trend, but we still have a foreign buyers tax.
Which
Amanda,
there's
take it away.
been some recent changes on which you can chat upon, but yes. So one thing I know about Canada is we love our taxes. More taxes, why not? Okay, so as of this past January, so Toronto's executive committee just approved a new 10% tax on non-resident home buyers, aiming to curb foreign speculation and free up housing for locals. So let's talk about this, because my theory is that if you are a foreign investor and you're planning to buy your dream home or an investment property in Toronto, 10% really isn't a significant amount, especially if you look at the US dollar compared to the Canadian dollar right now. So I really don't think 10% is impacting these foreign buyers. And a lot of people have conflicted opinions. Some people think, they should be charged 100%, right? Like they're a little bit upset because they want to make Toronto more affordable to live. The problem, again, is I think this really only benefits the government per se, because they're saying that it can generate anywhere from $14 to $1 million in taxes, which where does that go to, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, okay. So I do have some thoughts on this.
yes.
So, number one, I feel like this foreign buyers tax is somewhat of a what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's somewhat of a farce because there's so many ways around it. You
Mhm.
know, if you're a foreign buyer and you have a relative here in Canada, like you can send them the money, they can buy it, or you can buy it in a holding company and get around this foreign buyer's tax. But even if you don't, like let's say you can't get around it, you know, the people that are buying we're finding a lot of people buying, for example, from Hong Kong, from China,
Mhm.
from I think there was a number of buyers that I saw that were coming in from like Venezuela,
Mhm.
places where their currency is really being devalued. So they're moving their funds out of that country because the value of their dollar is being devalued so much year over year. But you know, that aside, let's say that it's worth it for them to pay the 10%. Let's say it's
Mhm.
worth it for them to pay the 2%, whatever it is, in Canada wide and then Toronto and Ontario, whatever. At the end of the day, like I think people forget how much of the pre-construction market was like upheld by foreign buyers. The
Mhm.
reason we have all these condos in the GTA right now is because a lot of them were bought pre-construction by foreign buyers.
Mhm.
This is so true. I love how you were like giving little loopholes for foreigners to like buy anyways. I love
Yes.
that little tidbit.
Yeah, messages.
No, that's okay. Call me. I'll help you. No, I don't do people. I'm not interested in that.
Sending thoughts and tariffs.
Yeah, so Ontario already had non-resident speculation tax of 25%. Let's not forget that.
Yes.
And that was, I mean, enacted in April 2017, which was originally at 15%. And then they slowly over time increased it to 25%, which is what we're at now. But now an additional 10%. So if you are buying as a foreigner in Toronto, you're paying 35% extra on top of the purchase price. Like that's actually insane. I know for a fact that some people I was speaking to, some buyers, when they found out about this like non-resident tax, it actually did like deter them from not wanting to invest in Toronto or
Well,
in
it's
Canada, I guess.
more difficult, right? Like we really do depend on immigration.
I found this stat by Jason Mercer. So I think you guys all know he's the chief market analyst at TREB, Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. And he said, quotations, foreign buyers make up as little as 2 to 3% of purchases in Ontario. And then I just thought it was so funny because it's like we're all with pitchforks, you know, blaming them for our housing prices and just because they're like not us, like they're not Canadian.
Mhm.
And then there was something else that said, so as of April 2022, a Terranet report noted that multi-property owners, so people who own more than one property in Toronto, actually make up 29% of Toronto's housing market stock. So like don't blame the foreigners per se, but like there's people like me, Pav, that own more than one property. So like if you want to come for pitchforks, maybe come for us.
Don't come for us.
No, I'm just joking.
More
Don't come for
small
us.
potatoes. Jenny, in that report by the TREB statistician, was that for resale or was that pre-con as well? That
I think it was maybe resale then.
it
It
was
wasn't
resale. I
specified.
don't know. I generally
But
don't know,
you're
and I feel like a lot of that information is kept away from TREB too, from the pre-construction side, because that's information
mm,
that's held on the developer side. But now we're facing a situation where you know pre-construction sales are non-existent. Like nobody's transacting, or very few poorly advised people are buying pre-construction right now, and we're risking effectively like 5 years from having no new condos coming to market at the same time as immigration probably starts to pick up again. So that's creating an issue. So I did read something yesterday, and it was right after Mark Carney was elected to be the next head of the Liberal Party and the new Prime Minister. But there's a group of developers in Vancouver that are now advocating for this CMA. So they're advocating to Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister. They're advocating for the CMHC to provide financing to foreign buyers. So not only are they advocating for the removal of the foreign buyers tax, they're not advocating for CMHC to actually provide insured financing to foreign buyers,
So let me get this
because
straight.
there's so few people buying right now. So, I mean, like, talk about going a 180, like from 35% tax to, no, wait, let's like help, Joe and overseas buy a place in Canada with our financing, backed by Canadian taxpayers, because nobody's buying right now.
Wow.
Well,
Total.
if that's the case, I would love to get a fraction of that because it is my tax dollars, right? That they're investing with.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I guess, like, from one perspective, anything to spark the market would be nice. I don't think it's a good thing that the pre-construction market has died a slow death. I feel like we may never see pre-construction sales the way they were in the past. And what we're seeing, like, just from conversations we're having with colleagues and developers, is that a lot of them are actually pivoting away from building condos to building purpose-built rentals. And so, if this trend continues where there's nobody buying pre-construction condos, the small time investor that, a family that would buy one or two condos and rent them out, like, the small investor is going to get pushed out of the Toronto real estate market. And it's just going to be a bunch of purpose-built rentals owned by big corporations. And again, for renters, that's a great thing, because you don't want to be dealing with a first-time property manager. Although there are many good ones, there are also ones that are less than professional and try to get away with things that maybe they shouldn't. But from a renter's perspective, that could be a good thing. But
I don't know if
small-time
it,
investment.
I'm not sure if it's a good thing because I do represent tenants as well as landlords. And what I generally notice is that those purpose-built rentals are always more in rent than like one that is with, like an individual landlord. So right off the bat, you're paying more. And because it is a business, they actually regularly increase your rent, like, without a doubt. I mean, there's been lots of stories about these purpose-built rentals, like jacking the price up to market rent, like immediately the year after, because, they are a business and profits is the name of the game. But I guess, like, when it comes to landlords, from my experience, a lot of them are actually pretty empathetic to the renters. I mean, the ones that I work with per se. And so, like, even like, I remember rented out these places for a landlord client of mine that were like, during the COVID times, which, as we all know, rent prices were super, super low. And he still has the opportunity to like kick them out and like jack up the rent to whatever market rent is now. Never did. And it's not rent controlled. Like, he has the opportunity, but like, he just has a heart.
Yeah, and go ahead, Amanda.
No, I was going to say, I'd also, as a landlord from his perspective, I'd rather have a long-term tenant, someone that I know is going to take care of the space and they're loyal, instead of having the worry to relist versus upping the price and having the risk of them moving out too, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't see these stories in the news, right? Like, you only hear the stories of the negative, like the really bad landlord that's trying to renovate, and but that's the way it is, I guess.
Yeah. I wanted to touch base on, because I didn't finish my thought about the multi-property owners who own 29% of Toronto's housing market. 59% cost, which was I thought was really interesting too. So, I mean, they not only own, their own places, but they also make up a lot of the condo market, which could also translate into the pre-construction market, which when I was working in pre-construction, that's what I found. It was actually, there was foreigners, but there was also a lot of people who were refinancing their houses in Markham or like Richmond Hill, like those big detached homes, most likely, and using that as down payment to get these pre-construction deals going. Those are a lot of my clients at the time. And now I feel like I'm committing a highway robbery just trying to sell a pre-construction. It doesn't feel good. And I try to sway people away from it, to be honest, even though, like, the commission is higher for us, but it just doesn't feel good leading someone into like a potentially really shitty situation, especially the way it's going right now. I mean, if the prices do come down, because I mean, I get that builders need to make a profit as well, but if the prices are so astronomically different than what resale is now, like it's so scary.
Yes, I would agree with you, Jenny. Like a disproportionate number of condos are investor owned compared to freehold. But I also feel like that's part of the reason why condos are so much more volatile, especially like in today's market where you're seeing the condo market in a downtrend, whereas freeholds are kind of maintaining a kind of steady pace. In some areas, they're even appreciating this year, but it's because if you own multiple properties, the first property you're going to sell is the investment property, right? It's not going to be the home that you live in. And people that own multiple properties generally probably have a freehold property as their primary residence, and then the investments are typically condos. So that's why we're seeing such a high supply number of condos up for sale. There's so many listings, but there's just no buyers because what's the stat? Like I think 40 to 50% of condos are owned by investors in Toronto or something like that. So like if it doesn't make sense for investors to buy, like who's buying all that inventory right now? That's partly why it's not moving.
Yeah, I mean, definitely first time home buyers, I think, are buying into condos right now.
Hmm.
And they're
For
buying at
sure.
fantastic prices, by the way. But I mean, they don't make up like a huge part of the market, I don't think. And a lot of them are really like scared right now.
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
spooked. And especially when you're jumping in the first time, like even if opportunity hits you in the face, like it doesn't matter if you're kind of unstable about the economy's going.
Yeah, there's a bit of a herd mentality for sure. I find that buyers rather buy in an appreciating market where there's multiple offers and there's lots of competition, prices are jumping every month. Buyers typically want to buy in that type of market rather than a market right now where there's a ton of inventory. You can negotiate prices, you can have every condition in the world on that agreement of purchase and sale, but because there's potential risk of downside and they see that nobody else is buying, it's like, well, my feelings are validated, nobody else is buying, I shouldn't be buying either.
Yeah, I mean, same goes in the stock market, right? I think I bought Alibaba stock when it was like plummeting. And then
Oh
I'm like,
no.
gosh, like I can't sell this damn stock now because like I'm going to be at a negative. And so I just held on to it for years and years and years. And now it's like skyrocketing
It's gone to the moon. Well, that's a
because
whole
of
nother conversation.
deep
Like
seek.
stocks
Yeah.
versus real estate. Like I'm big into stocks. Go Nvidia, go Tesla. The future of
Yeah. But
AI and
like you said, it's
humanoids.
because of, like that whole herd mentality, right? You want to go where
Mhm.
it's going up, but you really should buy when it's down.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Buy when everyone's fearful, sell when everyone's optimistic. Something along those lines. I
I think
think
that's
that's
Warren
Warren Buffett.
Buffett, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, look at the pandemic,
Awesome.
right? Everyone who bought during the pandemic, they're winning for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when rates were dropping down to 1%. I mean, free money. Who wasn't going to be buying, right? Taking
Yeah.
advantage of that, and then
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we were
and
not
then
smart enough to lock it in for 5 years.
I was like, stay variable. It might go down even lower.
It might just
Boy,
be
was I
at
wrong.
0% interest.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think at the time too, like Europe had negative interest rates. And so like, 1.5% sounded like really high when Europe was experiencing negative interest rates. So who really wanted to lock in, right? And then at the time, the Bank of Canada's governor was saying that well, rates are going to stay low for at least another 2 years. And then 6 months later, we had one of the fastest increases in interest rates ever. So, but we've got the scar tissue now, so we can advise our clients appropriately. We definitely know what to look out for.
I wanted to ask, if you were to get a mortgage today, would you be going fixed or variable?
Well, I just renewed my mortgage on one of my investment properties 2 weeks ago, and I did go variable. I got prime minus 1%, so I think I'm
Nice.
at like 4.2%.
Hmm.
For those of you who watched on our YouTube channel, our predictions for 2025, we expect that interest rates are probably going to bottom around 2.5% this year. So, if we have even another 25 basis point cut, like I'm going to be below 4%, I'm okay with that. But if there's more risk in the economy, um, maybe fixed rates come down, maybe I lock in, I don't know. Would you?
Variable. I know we spoke about this because we're on a variable mortgage in the last 2 years. Terrible move, as we all know. But now, yeah, if I were to refinance, I would stick with variable, considering all things considering, right?
Yeah, I'm on a variable right now. I was on a variable for two of my mortgages. So one was the investment property, and one is my principal. And I was bleeding for 2 years. I mean, now it feels a little bit better, but it's still like not as great as like 1.5% was what it was. But I would still go with variable because, like Pav said before, there's obviously there's flexibility in it. So if you do need to refinance, I mean, it's not like property prices are going up to refinance, but you do have that option. And you have the option of, you know, if you were to sell a property, it's usually 3 months interest that you pay instead of whatever it is with fixed that can potentially. And one of my clients paid like $20,000 plus to break their mortgage on a fixed.
Yikes.
So,
But you know what? Like that's a really good reason why I feel like, especially if you're working with investors, or like don't try to like go for the appreciation. Everyone was buying condos based on the hope that the appreciation would be endless. You got to focus on the income as well. Like don't buy negative cash flow properties. But for my primary residence where I am right now, like, one of the things that saved me when the rates went up is the fact that I have a basement apartment. I have a legal basement apartment where I get $2,000 a month. Mortgage went from like $2,900 to $4,300 a month. You know, that $2,000 made a huge difference. You know, like I'm living in this house after property taxes, after utilities. I'm living in a 4-bedroom house for under $4,000. But if I didn't have a basement apartment, you know, I'd be paying like $6,000 a month. Like it's crazy. That's crazy. But that's a topic for another day.
I was just going to
Why
say,
don't we leave it there? That is the end of our first podcast. We're going to aim to try and do this every week, every 2 weeks, something like that. And we'll hopefully have a name finalized for this podcast by the next time we get together. Amanda, you
yeah,
got
we
a
should
really
work
great
on that.
idea with
yeah, we should.
brick to brick. It's brick to
Yeah,
brick, right? You were saying?
brick by brick, because everyone
Brick by
says
brick,
they build
yes.
their algorithm brick by brick, housing bricks. I don't know.
I absolutely love it. So I actually Googled it, but somebody has it already.
Oh, no.
Yeah, somebody's got brick by brick, so we'll have to find a
Let's
spin
ask
on it.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, Amanda's the creative, so we'll leave it to her. But anyway, thank you so much for watching today. We hope you got some value. If you did learn something today, please hit the like and subscribe button or share it with somebody else who might find value. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.